Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is a midweek pod right before the OU BYU game. The Sooners are back on track to make a run to the Big 12 championship if the Sooners can win and if they can get a key loss from one of the teams that is contending with them for a spot. I'm Steve.
I'm Connor.
Jay.
Lucas.
So we're outside enjoying absolutely gorgeous weather here. This fall has been so beautiful. It's not even hoodie weather, which I guess we could complain about, although two of us are wearing hoodies. It's just so beautiful. I'd like to say that the Sooners are looking beautiful too. They were in the last game. We'll see if they can keep that up. We've got a road challenge, the last road challenge of the year. Everything from here on out will be home or neutral field, depending on where we go. What do you guys think? Do you think we're going to keep the momentum going against this BYU squad? Now, keeping in mind, their average age is about 37 years old, so they're very experienced older gentlemen.
Should pull a bunch of hamstrings and stuff there for 37.
You would think so. But I don't know. We'll see.
I hope the offense continues what we saw last week with the, throws over the middle that were actually complete this time. Involving Stogner actually worked. Less jet sweeps, more pump fake misdirection type stuff that they've been setting up the whole season apparently, and decided to bust it out in one game. And for as poor as BYU is on offense with what they've done in conference the last 5 games, we should have more possessions than normal. And I looked it up earlier, and I think our last 5 games we averaged 13.5 possessions per game. Now some of those are getting it back with like 45 seconds for the half, and you only get to run a couple plays or kneel down or stuff like that. But 13 to 14 possessions was what we were getting, and that was against teams that actually can move the ball a little bit. And if BYU doesn't, that should give us a couple extra possessions and gives us a greater chance of scoring.
Yeah, I think so too. And you always want to maximize your chances. I'll tell you one way to maximize your chances if you're out there and you're fishing. You tune into Fluke Luke Fishing. Just a reminder, he's the sponsor of the Midweek Pod. Fluke Luke Fishing YouTube channel. Fluke Luke Fishing brings you feel-good fishing content and honest reviews of equipment and tackle. Please go watch, like, and subscribe. Fluke Luke Fishing. Fluke Luke thinks we're going to win. He thinks we're going to beat the old men of BYU. What do you guys think, Connor?
It's the same. I mean, talked a little bit about it in the pregame or the video before the pod for this midweek. I think, to what Lucas said, if we can see that momentum from the offensive side continue, we haven't seen Jeff Lebby put together 2 straight good games building off of each other since he's been here. So I hope he doesn't go back to this, ticky-tacky, gimmicky stuff and trying to make things work. Just let your offense run the offense. Let Dylan do what he did last Saturday. Let him throw those balls over the middle of the field like Lucas said. I think going back and rewatching that game, we saw a great game from Dylan against Iowa State, but this one, I think even more so, he built his confidence as the game went on as well. And a lot of those throws where he's having those receivers set up over the middle that aren't just Drake Stoops. I don't know. It looked promising.
He's still throwing behind him.
And again, I think that's at this point that's just who Dylan is, right? And I will accept that for what it is if we have the play calling that we had the other day. So really want to see a lot more of just that basic, classic offense that we're used to, throwing the ball around the field and getting people open and kind of crushing it down people's throats. Defensively, just more of the same, right? I mean, outside of that first possession the other night, it was a dominant performance. I mean, we were up, 31-7 at one point going in the second quarter, and I don't think we allowed them to score again after that last score in the second, right? Did they score it all in the second half? I don't think they did.
I don't think so.
So, I mean, we had a one half of shutout football last week, which is nothing to scoff at, regardless of who you're playing. So, just that complimentary football that we're always asking for.
Yeah, not too much to piggyback on after what you guys just said. I'm a little bit more pessimistic. We've just been really subpar on the road, and I don't know if it's just Levy wanting to be more conservative. Your quote, your defense travels, right? So defense plays well. Just don't do anything stupid on the road to cost you games, which we have done. But so maybe he won't be as enthusiastic to throw it down the field over and over and over. But with as poor as BYU is, I just want to see just marginal success, honestly, just to build off a little bit from last week and really bring it all home together for what could be a very important Black Friday football game against TCU.
You think the 10 a.m. kickoff affects us much?
No, because it's still 11 for us.
Yeah, that's my kind of outlook as well.
Well, I hope it doesn't affect us, and what it may do is improve our chances. It may, to the degree that we would worry about a BYU home crowd being in the game, that's got to be a real diminishing factor. 10 a.m. is just very tough for anyone to get very enthused about a sporting event. I think it's a real take care of business type of game. You know that you're better. You are a 24 and a half point favorite. That is very substantial. We haven't been that big of a favorite in a game this year since
Tulsa, probably.
Tulsa. Yeah. What was SMU?
Cincinnati was probably
Cincinnati
high.
was 20, I think. So it's one of the bigger spreads, obviously, and that's even after we've had a couple of relatively poor performances. To correct, West Virginia actually did score. They scored
right
a touchdown.
before half, right?
No,
Oh.
9 minutes to play in the third quarter,
Wow.
and then they went for 2 and failed.
Okay, that was in the third quarter. Okay,
That's
for
right.
some reason I thought that was in the second. So, okay.
But yeah, other than that, a great defensive performance
Way to
for
be
sure.
wrong, Connor.
Hey,
yeah.
I appreciate
And,
the
you know,
appreciate the
everything
correction
else.
for sure.
For lack of a better word, but to get the monkey off our back
Uh-huh.
from that victory last week, just to know that there is still something to play for, not just the coach speak or
Pride.
what Stoops says or etc. There actually is something to play for here, and to kind of get that off of our back and the offense show up and the defense do well. There's no reason to not go out there and make it a business trip, like you said, Steve.
Yeah, I hope to see that, and it's a barometer game to see where your program is. If you're able to put 2 games together offensively, if you're able to do just what you're supposed to do. This is a game where you're supposed to dominate defensively. We looked up the stats. We quoted them a little in that preview video. They are not good. They're not good offensively, scoring the ball, or defensively, preventing scores. They are very bad at scoring points.
Well, the talent deficit is just, I mean, it's massive, right? Like you
Yeah.
said, like it has to be, this has to be a game where you go in and you dominate.
And you don't have to do a lot to dominate.
Right.
In fact, you are always worried about the trick plays and the different gadgets they may unroll on you. But by and large, you should be able to contain that without much worry. It's not like you're going up against athletes that can burn you very much. These guys just are not that way. You still have to be serious about it. In fact, I'd be more worried about them finding a way to speed the game up, slowing down their possessions, giving us minimal looks at it, and just being disciplined themselves, waiting for us to make a mistake. That's probably their best bet for success. That and a few things they may throw our way that maybe lead to a cheap score. It's supposed to rain at.
Right now, I think it's later that day, but
So probably not rain.
apparently the chances have continued to move up as the week
Okay.
has progressed.
Maybe
so.
get a little of that. Maybe
It's
cold.
a 10 a.m. game, so I mean, if
If it's anything like Kansas, we'll be screwed because we won't throw the ball at all.
Yeah, that's scary. That's actually pretty concerning. Although we are running the ball better and better, including Kansas. Hopefully we keep that going. But we know that to run the ball real effectively, you've got to have a good passing game. And so we talk about complementary football between offense and defense. We need to see complementary football within the offense, having some offensive production and balance on both the running and the passing game, which we did see against West Virginia.
You know, looking at their schedule, they have a really weird outlier of a football game, and that is beating Arkansas. And Arkansas, you know, say what you want, it's a decent team,
Mm-hmm.
and they went to the wire with Alabama. So it's just such a strange game that we all love, college football, where week to week it's
A lot of
really
things
pretty
can happen.
Yeah,
unpredictable.
BYU opened the season at home against Sam Houston State and won 14-0. And then 2 weeks later, they go, was it a neutral site or at Arkansas?
It's at Arkansas.
At Arkansas, won 38-31. Like, that's a crazy turnaround over a 2 week period to go from barely beating Sam Houston State.
And then to come to conference play and you can't score anything.
Yeah, other than Texas, I think Texas Tech, they scored, was it 27 maybe?
Yeah, against not a very good team in Texas Tech. So it's one of these games where you're really looking for a great opportunity to put someone away, keep the foot on the throttle or whatever to not let up, get that late score in the second half, or excuse me, at the end of the first half, and put yourself in a great position to get your backups in, get rest for your starters, get some more experience for some different guys, which we know it looks like for sure Jackson Arnold won't be a part of that because for some reason they're going to redshirt him. But other than that, you hope to see a lot of these other guys get some serious playing time, which means other guys are able to rest and get healthy or stay healthy. So that's something you want. And again, part of taking care of business is just getting out there and getting into a good lead and putting a game away as quick as you can, for sure.
Hopefully, as far as playing a bunch of people, is not the case of running back, at least for the first 3 quarters.
I agree.
We need to see Sawchuk get in the rhythm that he got into against West Virginia. He had the big run against OSU, was it 64 yards or whatever it was, running to the outside that we never saw at the rest of the game. But then last week, it was a pretty good mix of inside and outside. But what did he have, 22 carries or something like that? So I want to feed him the ball, especially if the weather's going to be not so great. You still have to have the throw of the pass, unlike what we did at Kansas. But if you feed Sawchuk 20 times, I mean, he should have over 100 yards. And then Drake Stoops is your best weapon on the team. And I think he had 12 catches last week. To me, you can keep throwing that until they stop it. Because once they try to stop it by bringing the safety down, then you've got an over-the-top situation to Nick Anderson or Gibson. And then you're reopening the offense again that way by, if you start off in the first couple drives of just feeding Drake, well, then they're going to have to adjust, and then you've got the downfield stuff.
Yeah, so I think that, I don't know, you say Stoops is our best weapon. He's been our most productive weapon. I don't know if he's truly our best weapon.
How crazy is it that he's at the top or at the top of most statistical categories
in the conference?
Yeah.
It's
well,
wild.
It's very impressive, and you've got to keep using him. I was going to actually say something about Sawchuk, and I'm going to say it about Stoops as well. Regardless of what you may or may not think about him being the best option, he's proven here late in the season to be that option. Feed him the ball. With Sawchuk, I think, were we unanimous in thinking Sawchuk was our number one long-term running back?
I was high on Sawchuk before he ever got here, but watching the bowl game, I was very high on Sawchuk.
Right, so I think going into the season, we all felt like Sawchuk would be the guy.
And we thought Barnes might be
number 2 finishing it off. Now, that hasn't proven to be the case. It looks more like it's a Sawchuk Walker situation. Regardless, he has proven to be your guy. Feed him the ball. Let's see him get that production through 3. I like your idea of through 3 quarters, and hopefully then you can give him some rest and let somebody else come in like a Walker and really finish him off. Same thing with Stoops. If they're not going to cover him the way that teams have not covered him, give him the ball. He's dependable, and he may not be your home run threat, but we don't really have big home run threats since Dylan struggles on throwing the ball deep.
It's just a cliche, do it till they stop it.
Absolutely, and it's important. It's one thing that I think we've been in past times, many coaches are afraid to do. They're afraid to go back to that well for some reason of being criticized or being gimmicky.
Yeah, Levy especially has been seemingly reluctant to do it. So, I'm with both of you guys on that. I mean, it's been great seeing Sawchuk get into a groove over the last couple of weeks. I mean, he's running with a lot of purpose, and this game last week saw the patience side of it that I don't think we saw earlier as well, like waiting for those. And I think it also speaks to the offensive line as well, right? Like, we're figuring things out up there. I mean,
and we didn't have our starting right tackle.
Didn't have our starting right tackle.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Guyton's going to be back this week. Sounds like Sexton's going to get some snaps at least. And then you have I think Sexton and Caden Green running out as captains this week. So you have a redshirt freshman and a true freshman as quote-unquote captains. So, I mean, that shows everything that they're putting together on that side of the ball. So, I don't know. It's the running game finally being here is a breath of fresh air. It's just, and maybe this is the entire team, it's frustrating that we're staring down 2 losses and having to,
Get help.
thread the needle and pin stuff up on a board to figure out how we get into the conference championship game.
It is. So I mentioned how it appears, I guess it's become clear that they're looking to preserve the redshirt year for Jackson Arnold. And now this week we've got a little bit, and this gives us an opportunity to talk about something that was a listener request, that we talk about the possibility raised that Dylan Gabriel will return. So we talked about this, I think, actually in the off season as well. I don't know if we mentioned it or talked about it really maybe early in the season, the idea that he might not be done with his college career. At that time, we actually talked about a possibility that he would transfer and finish his career somewhere else if he just wanted more time in college or needed it. I'm not sure, let's discuss this, I'm not sure he needs it, doesn't need it. If he can roll together, string together several more games like the West Virginia game, that might be all he needs to establish his credentials in the NFL draft.
So he only needs 8 more touchdowns in each of the
And
next 2 games.
not the 8 touchdowns part, but the passing efficiency, the passing production, and some of the running game. So if he can set the record or break Ty Detmer's mark in terms of career passing over the next few games, I think that might be enough. I'm not sure. But I guess they raised the possibility, Venables, when asked or alluded to the idea that Dylan might not be done. What do you guys think about that?
I think what's really interesting is this is a little bit of a byproduct of NIL, because he probably makes more money right now than I would guess that he will make next year trying to go pro, because I don't think he'll make a pro team.
I agree.
So if you're him and there is an option of coming back, I mean, you have to attempt it. Now, best case scenario, which again will never happen because it's just not real life, it's not a Disney movie, he just continues to be a mentor and understands that this is Jackson Arnold's team next year, and I'm just going to reap the benefits of NIL and help coach up the youngster as much as I can, but that's just not reality.
Not we're going to be that close to breaking the all-time passing record. I mean, well, he's at 10 right now. What can he get to? Realistically, in the next 3 games,
he could.
In the next 3 games?
Well, the next 3
There's a
games,
ball
probably
game.
one more person, maybe 2.
Yeah, I think he can pass Ty Detmer.
Okay.
Ironically,
so
from
no chance
BYU.
he gets to 8 then. Let's say.
Well, let me look while we're talking about that. I don't think this year.
Like if you're Venables, right, and this is a possibility, I'll even go as I'm not the biggest fan of DG, but it's not the worst idea I've ever heard of going into the SEC with that experience of a quarterback, albeit I think under a true quarterback competition next year, a real competition, I don't think he'll beat out Jackson Arnold.
No. I would be really surprised if he could do that.
I think the worry too, I mean,
But you have to have that conversation with Jackson Arnold. Like, if that's a possibility, like, are you okay?
Well, and that's the thing. So if you have Jackson's buy-in, and he says, "Look,
120%.
yeah, I'm here, and I'm here."
Like, I need to hear his grandma say it.
If you're Dylan though, the thing you got to weigh as well. I agree. The NIL does play a big role in it as well, right? I agree with you, Jay. I don't think he's going to go. I don't think he'll get drafted. I think he could get picked up as an undrafted free agent and go to camp and stuff like that. But if you're Dylan, let's say you continue this momentum, you end this season on a high, you do have some stock at that point to say you can test the waters a little bit. But going into the SEC, you've also got a chance to completely ruin any shot that you have of, whether it's making a team or getting drafted, because you could get exposed. I mean, if the ceiling...
I'll go as far as say he will get exposed.
I tend to believe that as well. I think I think it's going to be more of a, oh crap, why did you wasted a lot. You wasted a whole year of your time. You wasted a lot of stock that you had to be able to say, I could have been one of the best quarterbacks in the Senior Bowl going into this season and got some credentials there. But instead, you're throwing interception in the SEC, you can't move the ball, and you've been exposed for, I love DG. He's been doing a good job lately and has been serviceable this year. But
Just arm talent.
it's just, you've basically tanked everything that you've been working for. So I tweeted it to you guys. In my opinion, if DG walks into Brent Venable's office and says, I want to stay, nightmare scenario. Just from a pure, now Brent has to sit there and have one of two conversations, whether it's, I understand that, but either it's A, you're going to be in an all-out quarterback competition with Jackson Arnold, and there's a possibility that you won't start, or B, this is Jackson Arnold's team. You need to go find somewhere else to play.
And that's under the assumption that Arnold is progressing the way that
It is.
we all assume that
he is, right?
Yeah.
So
And we hope he is, but that could be an indictment of Levy as well. Something we've always worried about is his quarterback development, which we have witnessed an inability to develop a backup quarterback in some critical situations, obviously.
Still don't know if he
Still
has
don't know.
developed one.
Still don't know. So Dylan Gabriel right now, if this is accurate according to Sports Reference stats, he has 14,274 yards. That puts him 10th on the list all time. He needs to get to, now Sam Hartman, who's still playing, is at 5th at 15,239. I'm looking at Graham Harrell, who is at 15,793. To setting aside whatever Hartman gets to surpass Harrell as being 4th on the list, or it would be 5th probably with whatever Hartman does, he needs 366 yards per game passing, if including we play in the Big 12 title game. So more realistically is getting to Ty Detmer's 15,031. It's definitely within reach.
What number is that?
So 15,000.
No, what rank is Ty Detmer?
Oh, he is 6th.
So he could jump from 10th to 6th by the end of the season.
Yeah. In fact, it's pretty likely. I mean, he needs. Did it wrong. 270.
Math.
So he needs about, not just math, it's iPhone calculator. So if we play 4 games, he needs 189 per game, if I'm doing this right. If he plays 3 games, it's 252. Very doable.
Very doable, yeah.
So now, Case Keenum has 19,217. That is still achievable with a really good year in 2024. That'd be very tough.
And what is Case Keenum
playing
at?
much better defense.
Playing much better defenses.
What number is Case Keenum?
Number 1.
He's number one.
Yeah. So,
But
regardless
you're
of
talking
that,
about a 4,000-yard SEC season.
that'd be
Well, what
phenomenal.
about-
It's possible. We'd have potentially 16 games to play.
I mean, he's in a different situation than Trevor Knight was, because Trevor Knight didn't transfer from somewhere first. He started here and then transferred to A&M for his senior year after he sat on the bench behind Baker for a full season and was the consummate teammate from everything you hear. He had kind of, he lost his job to Baker, but still rah-rahed on the sideline, all that kind of stuff, said all the right things, and then grad transferred to A&M for just the 1 year, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So Gabriel would be a grad transfer and be eligible to play right away for his final season. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that, like you're saying, if he gets back his draft card and it's like 6th or 7th to undrafted, maybe he just goes and takes his brand to another school where it would be a step down to go from an OU to, say, an SMU or something along those lines.
What about Oklahoma State?
Well, yeah, maybe, yeah.
Or wherever Levy goes.
Or, yeah, maybe Mississippi State or something like that. I mean, there's a chance he could go to a non-Power 5 school or a lower Power 5 school and try to break that record.
Yeah. Now, and I think it comes down to, although it is coordinated with what you're saying there, what you had said, Jay, it's about money. It's about his long-term future. He has to weigh those options, and he probably doesn't see it the same way we do, and we could be way off, because I know there's other fans that are certain he's going to get drafted, late but drafted, and actually mid-round or draft, for drafting, and they're thinking he's likely to make a team. They really, they think he's likely to make a team. So if he is evaluating it that way, he needs to think about the risk of injury and what you would get out of 1 year of NIL versus one injury could take away any chance at a pro career where you think you have a chance at a pro career. So I don't know how he weighs that equation, but he's also got to think, like you're saying, Lucas, what are your chances you're actually going to get the job and keep the job at OU versus get beat out 3 games into the season by this guy who is phenomenally good in Jackson Arnold? You might just want to take your chances on a transfer if you think you need to come back.
I still sit back. I mean, the comments that were made earlier in the season and press conferences around, Venables made one around this is Dylan's last year. Dylan himself said this is my last year. I know things change as the season goes on and as things come closer to having to make that decision itself, but I don't know. I mean, if I had to pose the question to you, we can do the same thing that we did with Levy a couple weeks ago. I mean, if you guys gave a percent, and you could do this in 2 different facets, a percent chance that Dylan is at OU next season, what would you say that chance is?
15% chance.
15%?
Yeah, I was going to say 20.
Jay?
I'll go even lower because this is big boy football coming up. I think Venables knows it's big boy football, and as important as experience is, there's just too much talent sitting behind him to not let it rip and go. I'll say 5%.
What do you say?
I think I was around the 20% range as well, and just out of I don't know, and 20% or maybe slightly less.
Could
So
you
between 15
imagine
and
though?
20.
Could you honestly the position that we would be in if Arnold wasn't on board with that?
Be very difficult.
If we
Now,
lost
wait.
Arnold
You
to
might
keep an
you might be assuming too much.
18th year of
You may be thinking about it
or
wrong.
of Dylan Gabriel.
You may be thinking about it wrong. Brent Venables may be doing a classic move out of a coach, which is try to retain a player and keep that asset as long as you can, with no intention that he's going to be the starter. He just would love to have a really solid backup. So Arnold may be in on it, or in terms of buy-in, knowing you're going to have as fair a shot as any and likely will have the starting job. He just wants to have a great backup. Why else? I look at it for everything that we're seeing. We're not that wrong. Why else would you worry about this
I
situation?
don't think you can do that to a kid.
I
It's
mean,
been that.
Well, you may not do it to a kid, and Brent Venables might not do it to a kid, but it wouldn't be something a coach hasn't done many, many times.
Somehow
to a
Lane
kid.
Kiffin convinced Spencer Sanders could come be a backup at Ole Miss.
A third string.
So,
A third stringer.
I mean,
As it turned out.
crazier things can happen.
But that's because those guys don't think they're not going to win the job.
yeah.
It
But
could be
the-
the same thing.
Yeah.
But second part, maybe the better question, I think, because I just don't see how he comes back to OU as a backup. I don't see how this isn't Jackson's team next year. So what are the chances that Dylan Gabriel is playing college football next year? That's a slightly higher chance, in my opinion.
Well, you gave it 20% already, so
So
that's a
yeah,
pretty high
I'm
number.
thinking I think it's probably around 35%.
Yeah, I think 40 to 45%.
I wouldn't go that high. I'd say I had 15. I'll double it to 30.
There's a lot of mid-tier Power 5 schools that would take Dylan Gabriel in a heartbeat.
Yes.
There's a lot of Big Ten schools that would take Dylan Gabriel.
Yes.
I mean, he can go play for Kevin Wilson at Tulsa.
I don't even know that.
and put up tons of yardage.
I mean, I think you guys are even. I'm not a fan, but I think you're lowballing them there. There's a lot of teams, good Power 5 teams, losing quarterbacks after this year. I
mean, yeah.
absolutely could see him playing for Florida State.
Or North Carolina.
What's your probability that he's
We don't know what's
playing
behind all those.
college
They may
somewhere
they
else?
may
Right.
think they have their Jackson Arnold on the bench waiting for
I mean,
Drake May to
obviously, I don't know
graduate,
everyone's
waiting
depth
for
charts completely, but
DJ Ugalele to leave or Bo Nix. I mean,
well,
we
I'll
don't
tell
know
you
what's
this,
behind those
there's
guys.
not very many schools that have a Jackson Arnold on the bench. I'll just put it that way.
So what,
And-
Jay? You
So
think?
what's your probability? Yeah.
I don't know.
You think he transfers to
What
a
is,
Power
what is it?
5
Put a number
school
on it.
before he goes? Before
No.
he tries pro?
Probability he's playing for another college next year. Any college.
60.
Wow.
So that's a strong number. The reason I think that's a strong number is I don't think there's only you're basically saying there's only a 40% chance he tries to go pro. And they don't get a free look, right?
No.
If he goes, he goes.
You get a free grade.
Yeah, but if you enter the draft, you enter there. So he could pursue, he could get right up to that edge and come back. Come back from the brink and decide to return to college somewhere.
It's kind of crazy how the NCAA has let I guess you can still do this in football, but the basketball kids can put their name up for the draft.
Oh yeah, they get to go much
and then
further
because there's
into
only
it.
2 rounds, so if they don't get drafted, they can just come back.
Well, college baseball is
as
even
long
more
as they
different.
haven't hired an
They get-
agent.
they
But
get drafted.
you can still have an agent to do your NIL stuff. You just can't have an agent to do your pro stuff.
Yeah, that's
Pretty
what's
messed
jacked
up.
up
which
because
is stupid.
originally, before, you didn't want an agent fronting you a bunch of money on a potential draft income that you're going to make, right? But now that you are making NIL money, who cares what an agent were to get you leading up to the draft?
Lucas, what'd you say? What'd you think his percent next year?
Of playing college football still, it's
someone not
50-50.
50-50?
Yep, I can see cases for both.
No, not any college, just not OU. Any college but OU. So 50% chance of a college not OU.
Yep.
High number.
Just because it's.
I would take both of those.
Like
bets
I said, if he gets a
on
card
the other
back
side.
saying you're possible sixth to undrafted, he's going to go to the combine. I don't know that he's going to test well in any category. Athletically,
I know one category he will not test well.
arm strength. Yeah, athletically, he's good. He's not great. He's not fast. He's not going to wow any teams. Yeah, he's not a runner.
He's short.
He doesn't have the arm strength. Short isn't really a thing anymore after the last couple drafts between Baker, Kyler, Bryce Young.
You're talking about people
CJ
who
You're talking
are
about elite
remarkably
quarterbacks.
accurate.
Right.
though.
Yeah.
That's what. But I'm talking about
Heisman
the
Trophy
short
winners,
aspect of it isn't as big of a factor as it was.
Maybe not. I mean, how many non-Heisman Trophy winners?
I
have been
still think you
drafted?
guys are shorting him. I mean, he's a guy that's been in Heisman contention this year.
That's going against everything
There
we're
are
already
so
saying.
many
We've been
teams,
saying
though.
There's
There's so many college teams that would take Dillinger.
But we're not.
No one's saying
we're
they
not,
won't.
We're not shorting him in terms of his draft stock. In my
no, not in
opinion.
draft stock.
No.
But you're right. I mean, I'm not, and trust me. I think there's a lot of good teams out there. Like, I'm not going to say he's going to go to a Florida State who could be contending for a national title this year. He could.
I bet
but-
Clemson would kill for him.
What I'm saying,
Yeah.
the dispute between our probabilities is, I think he's going to go into the draft. You don't. I'm not saying he wouldn't make a bunch of rosters. I think in the portal he'd be swept up right away. I'm just saying he never gets to that point because I think he's going to go all the way to try to be in the draft. Or he's going to return to OU.
I mean, we don't know what his degree is. Maybe he's already consigned to the fact that he's not going to be an NFL quarterback and wants to go jumpstart whatever career he's looking at.
No
there's
way.
also
Could be in football.
There's also stuff to be said about, not that he's an OU legend by any stretch of the imagination to me, but signing autographs post college. I mean, how many people are going to do, where you go sign 100 helmets or whatever in a hotel conference room and they pay you, $50 a helmet to sign. How many of those can he do in a year?
And all that works better
And just
if
get
he
paid.
stays or comes back. If he ends his career at OU, including being done now, or comes back to OU and
Right.
finishes. It's very difficult to do that if you go anywhere else. If he goes somewhere else, I think he's really thinking established. I mean, there's obviously the NIL money might be great wherever else he goes. But he's also, I think, thinking, I want to make that leap to the NFL, and this doesn't get me there yet, but this next program could get me there.
Compare him to some of the perennial backup NFL players, the Chase Daniel, the Mason Rudolphs of the world.
It's not nearly as good as there.
He's not as good as
Oh,
them.
no.
He doesn't have the arm
No.
talent either of those guys have. And you could go down the list of all the guys. Rhett Bomar made a squad for a couple years.
Landry held a clipboard. He's not as good as Landry.
Yeah, no.
Not even close.
Not even close. So I don't see him being drafted strictly on arm talent. as his major holdback.
No, I think he has to know that too, which is why his only other
Or he'll find that out right when he gets graded.
very quickly.
his
yeah.
only other thing that he can do is to grow a legacy even further, and that's just to get more yards and move even further
Yeah, I mean,
up.
how cool would it
That's
be-
just what he'll always have.
How cool would it be? Like, yeah, you didn't make it in the NFL, but you're third all-time NCAA passing yardage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty
I
wild.
mean, you could come back and
Maybe he goes home.
he
Maybe
could.
goes to
I'm
Hawaii.
talking myself into the Disney story where he comes back knowing he's not going to be the starting quarterback.
and you're only one play away from stepping back in.
That's right. And you might be a
Especially
part of a
going to the
national
SEC.
championship winning program.
Also, I said that's the fairy tale that he's just becomes the consummate leader of the young guy and puts all of his potential future stuff on the
I
back
think that's
burner.
I think that's the lowest probability.
Yeah,
of every
I don't
scenario
think
we've
that.
talked
It just
about,
doesn't seem real.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's very low. Yeah, I would agree. It's of my 15% chance that he comes back to OU. That's less than a third of that.
Unless
And
they
he
pay him to
knows
do
that's
that.
what's happening. Huh?
Unless they pay him to do that.
They very well might. I mean, Brent might
Like, hey, you've
get
got nowhere else to
donors
go?
and say, yeah. No, he might
We're
say,
gonna
I
pay
need a
you-
great
we're gonna
backup
get you as many
quarterback.
NIL deals as you can. You're going to make $1 million a year, Norman, and be a backup quarterback.
He's not making that now, though, as the starter.
I'm just saying.
Well, but that may be the math that they want to do.
Yeah.
Is whatever he's making, it might be triple to come back and be the backup.
Maybe.
That could happen.
Who knows nowadays with all the NFL,
Who knows?
NIL stuff?
Yeah, because we've never.
It's all remains to be seen because
all
it's
new.
so new.
Yeah.
I would love it.
That's
I mean, you have a player coach at that point,
Absolutely.
and I mean it's a great. It's like the Drew Bledsoe to Tom Brady transition
That
type
could-
of thing.
That could actually improve his draft stock
Oh,
for
absolutely.
2025.
Yeah.
No,
Well, improve
it adds
relative to where he is.
it adds an intangible in his file that but nobody gives.
Yeah, the
crap
NFL's
about
not
that.
drafting kids because they're going to help grow another player down the road. I mean,
Well, if he comes back and if
They
he has
sign
meaningful
players for that.
minutes that look good, he may be a.
They sign
He may-
veteran
yeah,
backup
he may not get
quarterbacks to
drafted.
teach the
Yeah,
young
veteran-
kid.
but he,
backup
but
quarterback.
he
veteran
might.
NFL guys that have played for 10 years in the league.
He could
have
be a
lost
free
their-
agent who
Well,
gets
he
that
is going
job.
to be a veteran to some young
He
guy.
could go. It's a veteran is losing
Well, that's-
his job.
He's Chris.
That's-
Wilkie
He's
at
a
that
rookie
point.
veteran.
That's an interesting conversation. Obviously, we could go on and on about it, but let's transition to another interesting conversation. One that another one inspired by a listener request. So the Big 12 came out this week and clarified some rules about tiebreakers.
Crystal clear.
Made it crystal clear. So it looks like basically what they looked at the way it was going to break down and thought, oh my gosh, no. It doesn't make any sense if a team that beat two other teams and those two other teams make it to the title. That can't be. And so they, I think, reversed themselves and changed the rules after the fact, inappropriately, to make it in certain scenarios where Oklahoma State would make the title game, I guess against Texas, over a Kansas State or Oklahoma, who would otherwise be tied with them because Oklahoma State beat both Kansas State and Oklahoma. What do we think about changing the rules with, inside of the season, much less with 3 weeks to go when it's obviously going to benefit one team and hurt some others?
I think it's stupid to do it mid-season. It's obviously the correct choice.
I disagree.
To be made.
I disagree. They did not play the toughest team in the league, Texas. And so just like Kerry Murdoch said, their schedule is artificial. All of them are different. And so these rules aren't necessarily better if you structure it so that if you beat teams you could have a team, I guess you're only saying in the event that they're tied.
It's a head-to-head situation against Team A beat B and C. B
Well, I
and
know.
C didn't play each other.
I know.
So the best case scenario is if all three of those teams that are tied did play each other in the season, one of those teams is 2-0 and the other two are 1-1.
Yeah. But one of those, so two things. One, would you feel the same way if one of those teams wasn't even contention for the Big 12 title? Let's assume that UCF beat Oklahoma and Kansas State and then lost 4 other games. they're not going to get to the title otherwise. You're not going to elevate them above an Oklahoma.
Yeah,
and
they're not in
Kansas
the
State.
tiebreaker scenario.
Okay, so you're only looking at it when they happen to be in the tiebreaker, but they're only in the tiebreaker because Oklahoma played Texas and actually beat them. Played one of the toughest teams in the league. Oklahoma State escaped playing
But in
that team.
every conference in the country that doesn't have a round robin, which is all of them, outside of, the
SEC and Big Ten.
until this year of the Big 12, because we did play the round robin.
Right.
Every other conference does it that way because Alabama and Georgia haven't played each other in
But they're
10
in divisions.
years.
They're in divisions. So
I mean,
that one doesn't matter.
It doesn't change anything.
Well, it does. They don't ever have this tiebreaker come up.
What about the Pac-12?
So I don't know how the Pac-12 rules are. I will say that this rinky-dink conference obviously didn't think them through when they wrote their rules. If they're having to come back in the middle of it and rewrite and clarify
Why are they
what
not
it is.
just copying pasting what other conferences do?
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's
They have no foresight.
and it's just it is such a testament to this BS league that we're in, this conference. It is such a joke. I mean, it's week in and week out.
It's so
something.
Big 12 of them.
Week in and week out, it's something else. Every week, and it's just like
It's like they're doing it on the fly.
It is the fact that Lucas, you said the perfect word, the foresight, to not even. You're 2 weeks. You're 2 weekends away from the end of your regular season,
And you just now go, oh,
you
crap,
made an
this might happen.
amendment to a rule. They can say they didn't change it or whatever else. They added a full sentence today on a quote-unquote clarification. I call that an amendment. They changed it late mid-season to it's just so crazy to me. It baffles me. I
There's a scenario
can't find the right words for it.
this weekend, based on if it all went a certain way, that there's like an 8-way tie or something crazy.
It's
which is
hilarious.
always possible, especially when you have a league that is as pathetic as this league. And that's part of it, where you better think through your tiebreakers because you're in a league where, whether you think that's an attribute or not, everybody can beat anybody.
Well, that's where the foresight really comes into play, because you're limiting yourself on putting the best possible teams forward. Because
the rule that you had proposed was basically
just your highest ranked,
your highest two ranked highest in the playoff.
right in the playoffs, which gives your conference the greatest chance of getting into the playoffs and or another New Year's Six bowl.
Which is what happened in 2008 when we were the highest ranked team in the South Division above Texas and Texas Tech that put us in the conference championship game. Right? So, I mean, it's just...
And then they made the mistake in 2014 of not having a champion when they couldn't decide between TCU and Baylor and cost themselves a shot at the national was it playoff that year?
It was the first year of the playoff.
Ohio State snuck in ahead of them and wins the whole damn thing.
Should the Big 12 have made divisions for the one season and done
probably
2 17
I say
divisions?
no. I think they should have clarified their rules and been intelligent. I think that the problem with divisions and the reason the Big Ten is going to go away from them and that the SEC is not going to have them is you do exactly what we're worried about, is you do what happened in the Big 12 year in and year out, where your best teams weren't in that championship because you had to have someone from the other side. Same thing that's going to happen this year in the Big Ten, where you're going to have Wisconsin or Iowa or whatever joke is on that side of the conference play what is otherwise a really good team in Ohio State or Michigan for the championship.
They should have been rematching essentially more than likely.
Basically. I don't like the idea. I don't think division solves it because I think divisions creates these artificial groupings that there's no reason to believe year in and year out you're going to have the number 1 and number 2 team happen to be on opposite sides of the division.
Are you stuck at having the division winners having to play in your conference championship game?
That's the whole point of having a division.
Yeah, I think that'd be the point of the division.
But maybe you just have divisions set up so that you have
like
easier
teams play each other,
scheduling or like teams or crossover games.
Then you eliminate
and then you
easier.
still just take the top 2 teams.
Yeah, but then you
Which is what the Pac-12 is doing this year. That is the Pac-12 has divisions still, but now they've changed their rule where
That's why you're
regardless
gonna
of
have an
division
Oregon,
winners,
Washington potential.
you will have the 2
That just makes sense.
best record,
Yeah.
best teams in the championship.
I mean, how many years of the North and South in the Big 12 were OU and Texas the best 2 teams?
Right.
but OU,
Most, besides
most,
Kansas State years,
Yeah.
a couple
and
times.
a couple early Nebraska ones.
Like-
I guess Missouri too.
No, well,
I guess
at
it
least
wasn't
like
always clear cut.
3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years. And,
Yeah,
and
there's years where we played Colorado
Oh, yeah,
when they were probably the third best team in the conference.
Well,
fourth.
Well, I'd say
the
in
North,
2000,
the North had a lot more
2001.
parity than the South.
Yeah.
I mean, A&M had the early years, and
Yeah.
every other year after that was OU or Texas.
Yeah, I mean 2000, 2001. Probably not. I don't know about 2002, 2003. I'm not sure about 2004, 2008. At least those. Clearly, the South had by far the 2 best, if not the 3 best teams.
2005 as well. I mean, that's when Texas went on to win it, right?
But
OU wasn't that good. OU wasn't that
Yeah,
good.
OU was down
Yeah.
there. That's fair.
But anyway, yeah, quite a few times. And you look no further than the Big Ten and the mess that they're in, and it's year in and year out. In fact, that's something that's been to the detriment of the dominant school, be it Ohio State, in many years, when their stock wasn't real high because the victory they had in that game just didn't mean a lot because they beat the hell out of somebody who was mediocre.
They beat Purdue was in the conference championship
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, but
Purdue.
even think about the years that the SEC has gotten 2 teams in a playoff because Alabama and LSU went to go play Georgia, and the other one sat at home.
I don't think
and
that's
still
because
made the playoff.
divisions. I don't think that's because of divisions. I think that's because they had 3 highly elite teams. Some would say that's because of SEC bias. I don't believe there's much of a factor there. I think it's just because they had 3 of the best teams in college football, for sure. I don't think the division
Ohio
solves
State's made
that.
it in by not playing in the Big
Yeah,
Ten
they've
championship
avoided
game.
playing in the championship. Well, Ohio State's a whole special case because if you remember in COVID, they changed the rules
Yeah.
so that Ohio State could play in
Well,
the
last
championship
During the
game.
season.
Last year,
During the
last year they
season.
got in without
Exactly.
playing in the championship game.
Yeah.
Well, think about the national championship between Alabama and LSU.
Yeah.
That was the year that OSU got hosed, right?
Yeah.
That's why I don't play night games and names.
I remember
on,
Nick,
on,
Nick
a, on a
Saban.
Thursday.
Nick Saban literally said the season before, I don't think a team that doesn't play for their conference title should be able to get into the national championship game. And lo and behold, the next season,
He's having a
that
lobby
was him.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the fun political side of it. And
Yeah.
again, nothing that we're saying here is going to discount the fact that we would not. We're all extremely frustrated that we're in this position to have to talk about this because we lost 2 games.
And
that we
as
should have
much
won.
as we're frustrated by officiating, it's of our own doing.
Yeah.
Poor play calling and poor execution. Key turnovers in the Oklahoma State game. A bad game plan there. A bad game plan against Kansas, and we're looking at 2 losses.
But
It's
the
our
fact
own
is,
fault.
this is where we're at, and it's worth talking about because it does have an impact on us and what we're trying to do with this season.
And why we're getting out of this conference.
Yeah.
Because this rinky-dink conference
Yeah.
can't get their stuff together to figure out how they can position themselves for success. It's unbelievable.
I do know that if we were in Oklahoma State's position, we would be ringing the bells that we beat both of those teams. We should be in the conference championship
I agree with you
before
on
the
that.
other 2 teams.
Maybe not. I think I'd see the...
We definitely would.
Yeah,
I don't
we
think
would.
so. I think I'd see it both ways. I think I'd see, like I do right now, I see the case for Oklahoma State, and I also see the case that the rules are the rules, and I understand the logic of what they were trying to do, I think.
OSU should be just as frustrated with the conference as we are for putting because I agree if the foresight exists, the clarification is up front in front of the season, and it's as clear as what they are trying to make it out to be now, then great. Fact of the matter is, the rules were not the rules that they are today.
A week
yesterday.
ago.
I agree with that 100%. But in OSU's case, you can only play the teams on your schedule. They didn't choose to not play Texas this year. That was the happenstance of their scheduling. So I think
that was the rule.
If
But-
it's a
but
3-way
still, that
tie
was the
between
rule.
2 teams you've beaten, then even if they would have played this other teams, then they should still get in because
Well, then write
beat
a
you.
strongly worded letter to your mark and say
Yeah.
you better not be doing this crap when we are trying to be this power in the Big 12, which they won't be. But when they're trying to establish themselves as the conference dominant team or any of these teams, like
And don't have
it
a-
doesn't bode well for any of these teams that are going to be in this conference next year.
No, it doesn't. And don't have a solution that's only a half-ass solution.
Yeah.
This is just a piece-together solution to get the team that everyone by their own logic thinks should be in the game if these scenarios play out. We can play a million scenarios out, and we can come up with all kinds of, well, actually, this team did do this against this team, so therefore they should be in. I think you need a clear-cut rule like Jay lays out. If you're really a conference that's serious about having a real meaningful reason of why this team and that team should play for the championship, what is your end goal? What are you trying to establish? I would say you're trying to establish your best bet at a conference champion and the best bet at a team to advance, and that it has everything to do with your two highest ranked teams and very little to do with who beat whom back in September.
Especially because the conference shares the wealth distribution of bowl games.
That's true.
Well, there needs to be, some more objectivity to the whole thing. That is very much lacking, the way that they've worded it and the way that they've put the rule out there.
Well, there's just an incredible lack of foresight. And another thing that had a lack of foresight, let's spend a few minutes talking about the A&M situation, which is just a beautiful debacle.
Man.
If there is a program that is more emblematic of people who are completely, I don't know, I'm trying to find a phrase that's not just completely derogatory, but getting by on their own supply. They just make the stupidest, cringiest decisions. And this contract that they just bought Jimbo Fisher out on is so hilarious. To pay him $26,301 per day for 4 years to not be their coach
8 years.
8 years, excuse me, is so hilarious.
He makes over $1,000 an hour, 24 hours a day for the next 8 years.
To not be their coach.
It is so Aggie.
So when he goes to bed and he wakes up, he just made $8,000 more dollars.
Is there a provision that if he gets another job, he no longer collects?
Nope, I don't think there's a non-compete clause in there.
Not for a head coach, there's not?
Nope, I don't think so.
I didn't think
I don't know
God,
why.
it's even worse than I thought.
I don't know why they don't write those in there, because remember, I think it was Matt Rule.
He gave up his money
when he got fired from the Panthers. If he took another head coaching job at all, then he stopped getting whatever his buyout was.
Yeah,
right.
So he gave away $15 million or something.
Yeah, he could have sat at home for 2 more years before he took a job and just collected the payday and then went and started. But that guy loves football so much that he went to Nebraska.
Jimbo looks like a guy
and he
who
doesn't
belongs.
want for money either. I mean, we're talking about rich people.
Jimbo looks like a guy who belongs on one of those sports desks at halftime, though, and is doing some stupid BS analysis.
He's just too annoying.
I don't think
Vanderbilt versus Kentucky.
I don't think so.
Oh, I think so. Look at that smug guy. I mean, I think he's going to go coach somewhere, but I mean, if he wanted to, I mean, God, you were at Florida State and you ended your tenure there under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of fire. You come into A&M, you have negligible success relative to what you should have. Go take a break. Go Mac Brown this thing for a couple years, and then go get a job.
If you take away his couple Jameis Winston years, what has that guy ever done?
Nothing.
Where was he the coordinator at before? He was at Florida State, right?
Well, he was
he
at
beat us
at LSU.
He was at
LSU. That's right.
He was on that.
He was on
that
team,
Saban
right?
squad that beat us.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about before he took the Florida State head. He was the offensive coordinator under Bowden, wasn't he?
Oh.
And then Bowden retired, and he took the head coaching job. Is that where he was?
Let me validate real quick.
I don't think retired is the right word for it, right?
For Bowden?
Oh, Bobby Bowden, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Yeah.
I think he was the offensive coordinator for Bowden when Bowden retired, and then
Yeah.
he got promoted to the job.
He also got kind of pushed out, though, didn't he?
Well, I mean, he was 80, whatever he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was OC QB coach at Florida State.
How many years was that before he got
Just 2.
Just 2. Where was he?
LSU before that. So 2006 he was OC at LSU. 07 3 seasons at Florida State. 7 to 2009 Florida State OC, and then head coach from 10 to 17, and then A&M 18 to
Saban was already gone then.
7 years,
and
he produced just one guy who I mean, I don't know if you guys remember that season. I was so frustrated by seeing Florida State win that title because they were not the best team. He was not a great quarterback. He just had athletic skills with his feet.
And Auburn completely chokes that national championship off. I mean,
Yep.
they have a big lead in that game that they end up blowing and losing the game, which I don't like either of those teams. That was a weird game to watch.
It was a weird game to watch.
Yeah, Jimbo's not much outside of Jameis.
Yep.
So, who do we think is going to take that job? This is the handicapping pod, apparently. So, what probability do you have that Lincoln Riley takes that job? Lucas?
10%.
Aligned, 10%.
Yeah, I'll go 15 just for fun.
Just to be above him? Connor?
10%. He's not taking that job.
I have inside information. He said he is not the next coach at Mississippi State. That means he for sure is going to take. I would put it somewhere around there too. I'd say very, very low chances. Maybe I would go lower than any of you. I'd give it a 5% chance.
I'll throw you a seismic event if it were to occur, though.
San Andreas fault level. That's Southern
Lincoln
California.
to A&M, and Caleb's coming with him for as much NIL money as A&M could possibly find.
Yeah, and you know, I mean,
I'd love
we
it.
talked about Dylan
It would
Gabriel and
be
his draft
massive.
stock. I mean, are we sure that Caleb Williams can't meaningfully improve his draft position by coming back another year? Maybe so.
Depending on his
I
And
think
make
he
a lot of money
I think
doing
he could
it.
make $10 million going to A&M.
depending on his school status, he can't go to A&M and start
If
That's a good
he
point.
might have
unless he's a
graduated.
graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's
'Cause
the
he's already-
probability
he's already
he
used his free
graduates?
transfer.
Yeah, he
Good
can't.
point.
He can't. You're right.
You're
He
right.
can't.
Yeah.
You're right.
I love the scenario, but you're
So-
right. There's no
this is his.
chance.
This is only his third year.
This is junier
Oh,
year.
I guarantee you,
So he
this is
doesn't-
no knock against him
class-wise, he probably doesn't
in
have
terms
enough.
of his intelligence or his ability, you know, his worth as academically as a student. But I'm gonna guess his class load is not real difficult.
Maybe he did
hasn't
concurrent enrollment when he was in high
advanced
school. and got
real
a bunch
far
of hours.
into his. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna guess no.
I don't think so either. I'm just.
I'm
He
just-
might have,
saying that
he might have
I don't
came
think he
into
can.
college with 60 credits already.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If he did a bunch of concurrent
I'll
enrollment,
bet against that.
Yeah.
I'll say no.
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting though. I mean, they're going to go throw some bags at some people, and
And you know them; they thought they were going to get Nick Saban last
All right,
time
better
around.
chance. Do you think A&M does the smart thing and
No.
gets a good football coach, or do they get a splash hire?
Splash. Splash.
tell me what you were talking about earlier. With you think because they paid out
Okay,
Jimbo
yeah, this
mid-season,
is what I was thinking. You've
they
got to
have to
come
have
up
a
with
guy.
a large amount of money. I don't care how much money you have. If you're going to come up with $76 million, right? You go sit down and you talk with your donors. Like, listen, guys, I'm going to need you guys to pony up $76 million, and we're getting Jimbo out.
they presented a $160 million check at halftime the other
I thought
day.
it was 300.
no, but I'm saying.
Was it? Well,
Whatever
regardless,
that picture is,
Okay.
it was outrageous.
Still, it's
I can't
still
remember
not
what it was though.
play money.
It
You
is to those
have-
guys.
No, you have to still say, okay, that's cool. Who are we getting? And if you're the athletic director, you can't say Mike Elko, Jeff Traylor. Like, you just can't be like, what do you guys think? Cut me the check.
I agree, and I
Like,
think that
you have
that
to
is
have
that is why they're in this. They're going to be.
somebody lined up, like somebody you really think you can get.
I don't think so.
I don't think you have to have somebody lined up, but you
You gotta have
either
an idea that you can.
yes,
So
you
you think
either
that's what they have right now?
You either have someone lined up, or you say, we're going to go get the biggest name we can possibly get. I can't make a promise about who that is, but there is no limit to who we're going to pursue, including NFL guys. We're going to go get that guy. I could see them saying that, and that's how those donors all nod and say, yes, now this is on the right track.
I just don't know.
Here's
Like
my wallet.
even from a splash hire standpoint, I know money says a lot. I guess.
Bill
your,
Belichick.
your biggest, yeah, your biggest splash hire. That would be crazy. That would be absolutely crazy. And I saw some stuff saying Belichick is already basically backdoor confirmed he's not going to be the coach in New England next year. That's wild. I didn't think about that one. But who? I mean, so your big splash hires. Let's
Brady's
keep it.
offensive coordinator.
Let's keep it at. Oh man, God, that's so many levels. I love it. And they McDaniel comes in as as some sort of. He's gone now. Let's keep it at the college level. Your biggest splash hire is obviously Nick Saban, Kirby Smart.
There's no.
You're not going to get those guys.
Yeah, 0.
Dan Lanning would probably be a close third at this point. He's basically come out and said,
Hard no.
no effing way am I
One
going to do
huge
that.
one you're missing so far.
I mean,
I think the biggest splash hire possible.
Dabo,
Nope.
No, you think it's Dion.
Nope.
Oh.
Dion would be
He would not be a
hilarious.
splash hire.
Nope. I think there's a huge splash hire you haven't thought of.
Dion is not a
Who,
splash
Brent
hire.
Venables?
Urban Meyer.
Oh,
Yeah, see that's
Okay.
where that is where it works, because he's
That
a
works all around.
massive. He's such a big POS that he would jump at it. There's no amount of backdoor
And no matter
bar
And he's
what
got
kind
the
of crap
history.
he gets them into,
He's got the
in
history.
3 years, who cares?
Yeah.
They won't care.
He's got
Texas A&M will absolutely sell their soul to win a title, and if it shuts down the whole program in 3 years,
Wait, wait, wait.
then it
Conference
shuts
title.
down
They
the whole
sold their
program.
soul. They sold their soul
win.
last
They'd
time.
sell this over a conference title. What are you talking about?
I'm just saying
They would bury
I'm
another
with you.
dog just to get a conference
whatever
title.
baggage came along with Urban Meyer, they don't care. They would not care.
I don't think there's that much baggage with Urban Meyer.
Well, he creates his own baggage.
I don't
he,
think
he does. But
I
he's-
don't think there is either. To be honest, I think
Yeah.
there a lot of crap surrounds him, which
Well,
he doesn't.
whatever.
He doesn't
He
put
has
in
No,
his
no,
head.
no, no, no,
Crap.
no, no, no.
It's on
no,
it-
no, no, no. I'm
It's
with
because
you.
it's on his
I'm with you.
finger.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's a POS. He's all those things. I think
He's
he's,
so
a
A&M
dirtbag.
though.
I think he's got all the baggage and everything. I just don't think it's out in the open. He's not a known dirtbag. Like he hasn't.
He is a known dirtbag.
Not in the same way. Not like he's got controversy. Not like he's got.
He's just a dick.
He's not like a guy who's a known. He's not like even what Harbaugh is getting close to being in terms of a known cheater. And he's not somebody who has like. He has been adjacent or right next to people who have done really bad things or pretty bad things. But it's not like he's had run-ins with the law and run-ins with other stuff. It'd be different if you're talking about him to be the next hire at Notre Dame. Yeah, he's got enough dirt. He's not going to get a job like that. But A&M, absolutely. I think they would. I don't think they would blink.
Yeah, but he had the phony medical stuff when he left Florida saying,
That's
"Oh,
not
Yeah, but what? That's
anything.
nothing. I
That's
mean,
nothing.
who cares?
No
I
one
mean,
cares about that.
Yeah.
I
He
think
still
people
came
would-
back. He coached
if
2
anyone
teams
brought
after
that
that.
up, they would throw that back at you to say, don't say that. Why would you say something
he
about
coached-
a
I
guy?
mean,
he coached 2
Half
football
of
he
his
had
teams.
bad
team
stuff
from
at
2008
Jacksonville.
still in jail.
yeah." He had Jacksonville.
No
he was
one cares.
kicking kickers, and
No one cares.
I don't know.
No one cares.
I
That's
think
not,
he's
that's
toxic.
not real bad stuff.
he's toxic.
Toxic,
He may be
he's
toxic,
toxic
yes.
doing what?
But
though?
he's not toxic
He
like a
wins
known
football
criminal.
games. He wins football games, and that's what A&M wants.
Oh, he's
One of
my
the
new
names
lead candidate.
floated is Dan Campbell. Would you step down from the Detroit Lions job
No.
to go back to your alma mater and be the head coach at A&M?
Yes, for
think he
a
probably
$100
would.
million guaranteed dollars.
For a lot of money, and you are an organization that is a perennial loser.
He seems like an NFL guy through and through.
he
to me.
does.
Yeah, I don't see him recruiting.
And that's what the only reason I'm discounting some of the NFL stuff is college is such a different animal now.
It's
like
all
with
year.
recruiting is so different, and NIL is so different. Like
Yeah, but
there is
I
something.
think
There is
NIL
something.
makes
to
it.
be,
Makes
It is more like free
than
agency,
that.
which
Yeah.
the NFL is
yeah,
used to.
but there's still.
But recruiting's
there's a
always
lot,
been
There's a
different.
lot
It's
more
so
work
different.
that goes into. I mean,
Well, it's different work.
yeah, it is different work.
And that's why I've always said that, and I think I was wrong in the degree to which I thought this. I always thought Lincoln Riley wasn't a great candidate to leap to the pros because I used to think one of his key advantages, his competitive advantages, was recruiting. Now I don't believe that so much, so I don't think it's as big of a hurdle to say you're going to move to the pros. But for the most part, yes, those guys in the pros aren't necessarily very good at one of the key components in success in college, which is recruiting. So you either have to get deep into that and be really good at it, or surround yourself with people that can make up for the fact that you're not doing it. So you have to discount the NFL coaches a little bit from that standpoint. I like the Urban hire a lot. I think that's a really
I think for
sexy one.
A&M's success, that's about as good of a hire as you could possibly make, and it would be to our detriment a little bit, honestly.
Oh, sure.
I
You know,
think for entertainment value, just because I would want to see what happens, Dion would be fun
It'd be so fun.
as a non
It'd be so
A&M
fun.
fan.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a Texas resident for a long time.
I think a scary hire for other teams that have to compete with A&M, and these people won't do it, but a Kleiman, who's
Yes.
just a straight-up football coach and a
Yes,
winner,
I agree.
even Leipold
Yep.
from Kansas.
He doesn't
I
fit
think-
there, though, man.
I think,
And
these
that's
guys
not a
don't
splash.
fit. No, it's not. Kyle Whittingham would. I could see him turning A&M into a juggernaut.
I don't think he would put up with that donor.
I don't think so either. I'm
Donor
just
situation.
saying, if you just got rid of all the outside stuff,
I don't know if Whittingham
Yeah,
would
but you
be
can't
that
there.
good.
I think he's a great coach.
I think he is a great coach.
So,
What about an existing, like a Whittingham level, an existing Power 5 coach that is, quote unquote, on the rise and has turned the program around, Josh Heupel? Is that somebody A&M would think would be a good enough upgrade over Jimbo?
I don't know. He's not really. I mean, the product he's put on the field this season hasn't really done a whole lot, right? I mean, and again,
Are they in the top 25?
I think they still are.
I
They can't.
remember.
They
I
can't
can't
win
think
on
of
the
it. I
road
mean-
though. I don't know. And the thing
Yeah,
about
they're like 14.
the thing about
they're like 14-0 at home and 4-5 on the road.
the thing about Dion is, I don't know if Dion leaves. His
yeah, Tennessee's
kids.
21st.
I don't think if Dion leaves his sons, right? I mean,
Right. Thank you.
Well, the quarterback can go to the NFL.
Can
Yeah,
he?
yeah.
Oh, really?
for
Because
$100 million. I mean, I don't-
Yeah, and I don't.
I-
Dion
his
does
kid's
look.
eligible
Dion
to go to
does
the
look
NFL.
after himself. I guess.
I don't know.
he ranks
The
his
only
kids.
way
What are
I
you
see
talking
Dion
about?
being a hire there is because the delusional people at A&M would think that's a splash hire.
No, it's the best A&M hire for us as possible. And
Oh,
that is
yeah,
the
yeah,
epitome
yeah,
of
yeah.
an A&M hire.
Oh, absolutely.
Would be to go
yeah,
get Deion
absolutely the epitome. Now, I was going to say something about what you alluded to, Jay. I'm not too worried about them being good because there are going to be just so many teams that are good. That's granted. And there's only so much good to go around. It may be better to spread the wealth a little bit rather than a Texas and an LSU be the dominant teams in that part of the SEC.
region, yeah.
It'd be better maybe to have some relative parity there with A&M sucking some of those recruits away and not allowing Texas to monopolize that to a degree, or LSU. I'd rather see that split, maybe split those up among 3 teams rather than 2. So I'm not too scared about them getting a really good hire. And then again, there's something about that culture that they'll make a great coach
Emphasis on the cult.
mediocre. Yeah, I mean their expectations and what they actually want to achieve is so out of line with what it really takes to achieve excellence. I think that it can make you worse at what you do.
they've also had top 10 recruiting classes over the last, I don't know, 6 or 8 years.
They've had the
and have done
number
nothing with it.
one ranked class of all time 2 years ago.
But
and done really nothing
but
with it.
give them a coach that isn't incompetent like Jimbo, and maybe those top 10 recruiting classes turn into something.
Yeah, I
Watch him.
think
Watch
tw-
him go get Sark.
I think 24/7 does.
That would be hilarious.
They do a composite, like 4 or 5 year, recruiting thing, and A&M has the 4th best roster in the country.
So it'd be interesting to see how that competitively plays out relative to OU and everyone else. It might help all. I mean, there's a degree that you don't want to play the best teams, and there's
I
also
think
a
it goes-
degree that you want the best teams in your conference because you want to be that conference in the SEC where they say, we can't leave 5 teams out of the playoff that are from the SEC. It's almost granted we're going to put 5 teams in, or we're going to try to get 5 teams in.
What was it? Georgia, Bama, Ohio State,
Yeah, and then
A&M?
A&M.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And 3 of those teams
Or
actually,
Bama, or
Or showing it.
yeah,
could be Bama,
have
Georgia.
used
Yeah,
their,
yeah.
what they've
Yeah,
got.
that's the deal.
Yeah,
That's
3 of them have been
that's-
competing for championships,
and
winning
that's
championships.
That's A&M's kind of
Oh.
the fans and the athletic directors and everybody else.
That's
is kinda
why you
like,
fire a guy and pay him $75 million, because he isn't.
Yeah,
doing
you were
anything with the
not-
talent.
You're just not getting what you should get out of these
And
players.
also, you're not having to come up with that $75 million off the bat. It was 20 something up front, and then what was it, 30 million over 8 years or whatever.
It's
so
like 7.5.
when you're going
year,
when you were talking about earlier, they already have to have their guy. I don't think that's the case at all. I think those guys are sitting around a room saying, "Hey, here's 5 guys that we can target.
I think they're still paying Sumlin.
We're just going to fire him now, and we'll come up with the money later."
What about and not to keep going down, but what about like a James Franklin, who can't figure it out up at Penn State because he's
That'd be the
recruiting-
exact reason. He already can't figure it out.
He is Jimbo Fisher,
But he's recruiting against Ohio State and Michigan for those kids most of the time, right?
Nah, he sucks. There's no chance.
I'm not saying he's good.
His record,
Yeah.
what is he? He's like
Yeah,
3-15 against.
Well, don't
top
so
25 teams or something like that.
maybe you know this answer. I don't know this answer. Is the athletic director today the same guy that hired Jimbo Fisher?
I think so.
So if that's the case, this is a guy who was part of that deal, who exercised what I think was really poor judgment.
I don't think it is the same guy.
So maybe it's not. And I'm getting at, this is an organization that has made bad decisions in the past. They could make really surprisingly bad decisions again.
Didn't they bring in the guy from Florida State to A&M, and that's
At the
why
same time?
Yeah,
And so
I think the Florida State I think the Florida State AD went to A&M, and then brought Jimbo with him, and I think he's still there.
so
But I don't.
that
follow
sounds familiar
A&M
to me too, but I don't know.
Super close.
Now this would be
I'm not a cult member.
fun, just
No,
because.
he was at Ole Miss. Came over in 19.
So he didn't hire Fisher then.
What if they went back to the well and stole back-to-back Florida State head coaches?
I've seen that.
Florida State might
It's a-
explode.
Florida State's a feeder coaching school for A&M.
Yeah. And then they realized the mistake they made by not bringing in Dion, and then Dion goes to Florida
Deion
State.
goes to Florida State.
His alma mater. Because although I did think, they had somebody ask him a question about Florida State, and he said, I don't claim them or something. Remember that
Yeah.
a couple months ago?
Yeah, because
Yeah, right.
Because he didn't
he
graduate
didn't
from there.
graduate from there.
So I'm not a Florida State alum or some crap that he said, which is just throwing shade because he's mad that he didn't get the job when Norvell
Absolutely.
did.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know. It's a very interesting conversation. It's going to be an interesting hire. Obviously, it's up in the air. There's nothing about it that we can pin down. It's not a lock yet, but I tell you what is a lock. The locks of the week.
The realest deal, locks of the week.
And the locks of the week, of course, are brought to you by 5 Star Concrete. David and Josh are local business servicing the metro area from patios, sidewalks, driveways, shops, and more. Call them or text them at 405-306-3014 or look them up on Facebook. That's 5 Star Concrete. Well, let's talk about how we've been doing most recently and see if we've corrected the trajectory at all of where we are. Up, checking in? Nope, we haven't.
I think I misunderstand the rules.
See, it's well, actually, in a sense, you've got it down.
Okay.
You are locking in on losers.
Yes.
I'm the one who can't figure it out. I was 1-2 last week. Connor's figured it out. He was 3-0. Lucas, you were 2-1. So you haven't figured it out exactly, but at least you're on the winning side of it. And Luke and Jay, you've totally figured it out at 0-3.
That's
3 weeks in a row?
just no. Listen,
3 of the last 4.
Oh, sorry.
3 of the last 4.
don't bring that on me.
As a group.
I only go in no particular order. There's a 0 and a 3. That's all I do. I'm either 3-0 on the right side.
A lot of
or
volatility.
I
in those
told
guys.
I told you last week, literally, make your picks and then just fade yourself when we announce them.
I would be 9-3 in the last month.
Yes.
Yes.
So, as a group, we are 73-1 for a 49% winning record. I am at the bottom of that, 38%.
How are you at the bottom?
I'm at 38%.
I'm 3-9.
He's got
Yeah.
a whole lot of
Last
1 and
month.
2s in
I
there.
got a lot of 1 and 2s. It's my favorite number combination. You're 42%, Jay. And we have a tie at the top between Connor and Lucas, 58% each. That's a very respectable number, 58%. That's good. So let's turn it around this week, guys. I'm going to turn it around by picking a team I picked before and had some success. I'm going to start with Penn State, giving 20.5 to Rutgers. Then I've got Duke giving 3.5 to Virginia, and then Oregon giving 22.5 to Arizona State. Connor, what do you got?
I have. You may have to hold me honest. I think the lines may have changed a little bit.
Why don't I tell you what you have?
Yeah, you can just let them know what I got.
You have Tulsa getting 4.5 against North Texas.
Yeah.
You have Oklahoma State giving 7 against Houston. You have Washington getting 2.5 against Oregon State. Now that's an interesting one. So the 5th-ranked team in the country is getting points on the road against a team that has not been able to decide if they're good or not. They're back on being good. Oregon State, we'll see where they are. They won, I guess, a judge's ruling in their favor that they and Washington State control the Pac-12 right now.
And all of the $200 million.
That should be
money.
the correct move, if you ask me.
Yeah, you're probably
when
right.
everybody's leaving the conference,
probably
why
right.
do they have any say whatsoever?
You're probably
It's
right.
a lot like when we didn't get to vote on the new members coming in the Big 12. We didn't deserve to.
I think most of it is monetary based. It's not. It's
I
not
don't
just,
think they care about that.
I don't think it's just voting rights.
I think it's pretty dang funny, though.
It is. So who among the remainder want to go first?
I'll go Tulane minus 9.5 against FAU. I've got Iowa minus 3 against Illinois.
Bold.
They almost covered last week the total by themselves.
That's right.
It was 27.5.
They were
won
on
22 to nothing.
They were on the 5-yard line with a minute to play, and if they would have just punched it into the end zone, they would have covered the over all by themselves, and maybe that OC would still have his job come the end of the season.
They already announced that he's not coming back because he couldn't average 25 points. And then I'm going back to my stalwart of JMU minus 9 against App State.
All right. Well, Jay, tell us who's going to be 0-3.
Let's see here.
Please don't have any
Got
of my
bad
picks.
news for you,
Please
Connor.
Don't have any of my picks.
I thought about going with Texas just to put the hex on them because we need it.
Yeah.
That's when That's when you'd have a
when it goes
3-0
3-0.
week.
Right, exactly.
So stay away from Texas.
I am going to roll with Kansas State minus the 8.5 at Kansas. I'm counting on the fact that their quarterback's got a bum leg for Kansas.
Their second stringer,
Correct.
although he started every game this season for the most outside of the first 2.
And I'm also taking Oklahoma State minus 7.5.
Sorry, Connor.
Minus 7.
Minus 7.
now.
That's right. It's corrected against Houston. I don't like Gundy, but I do think he's a good coach. Last week was a little bit of I don't know. I don't know what happened to him last week. I think they'll rebound. And who did I go with?
The
What was
Fighting
my third?
Heupels.
Who?
The Fighting Heupels.
Is that what I went with?
You went with Tennessee.
Tennessee
Oh, my
plus 10.
God.
Plus 10.5 against Georgia.
Well, I have no reason
Is it
for
10
that.
or 10.5? I don't think it matters. It's Jay's pick.
It's 10.5 on here.
Might as well be 1,000. Well, let's hope we can get us as a group into the positive territory. We're very close.
Let's get in the 50%.
I'm counting
very
on
51 percentile.
I'm counting on. Last week for Tennessee was they played so bad. It wasn't their normal. They're mean. Their median play style. Georgia is on the up and up, but they haven't been completely dominant on the road. And Tennessee's like 14-0 at home.
Yeah.
Last 2 years.
They're going to be, yeah, that
They're
place
gonna be amped
that
for
place is going to be, I'm a little jealous of the atmosphere there because it's going to be rocking.
Yeah.
That's going to be a fun one in Knoxville. I
I
hope,
don't love it, but that's my reason.
I hope you're right. I hope it sounds like a 3-0 week to me, and I'm saying that just because you have one of my picks. So
Well, let's talk about the OU score. We don't think very much of BYU in terms of their ability to score nor their ability to hold their opponents from scoring. We know that OU needs to have a win to keep their hopes alive to get to the Big 12 championship, and we want them to have a strong finish to the season. I think we'd love to see them be 10-2. That would be my prediction right now of where we'll finish the regular season. And in keeping with that, I'm going to predict OU 56, BYU 10.
nice. I have a little bit of a little bit of a closer game. I've got 45-17 to the Sooners.
I have 41-10 Oklahoma.
Are we going to miss an extra point?
Nope, 2 field goals.
Okay. Jay?
38-13.
Okay. Got the low score and the middle score in terms of what BYU will produce. Well, we'll see. I guess everybody has us covering except Jay, right? No, Jay.
I got a
Jay
half
would.
point.
Yeah, 24.5, right? Okay. Yeah, you're right. All of us have us
Easy,
covering.
easy cover.
Barely covering. Yeah. We'll see.
I have no confidence in Levy. I'm not gonna lie.
So I'm not going to lie either. I tend to have a lot of doubts myself. And that's frustrating to come into it with that attitude. It's disappointing and frustrating, and I could see the coaches, if they were sitting here saying, I'm frustrated with you as a fan to think that. But I just haven't had any reason to have confidence that they're going to put everything together that they need to.
I mean, I saw
very confident in the defense.
I've seen fans for the last 72 hours just totally back on this train of
Gushing.
Levy's some incredible
Gushing.
coordinator, and look at us now, and what a great game it was, and look at DG's numbers.
It was a great game.
It was, but it's a game.
But it was out of the norm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we'll have more possessions. Like I talked about earlier, we were having 13 or 14 possessions a game over the last 4 or 5. And I think as good as our defense has been and as poor as BYU's offense has been, that could amount to 2 extra possessions this game and or shorter fields, which would give me – that's why I've got us in the 40s as opposed to mid-30s.
What we're used to.
Yeah.
Seriously, what does BYU have to play for other than pride? To the extent that it matters.
Point, I mean, are they?
They're 5-5.
So they're playing for
they're
bowl
playing for a bowl
eligibility.
game, but they have
They have Oklahoma State.
they have
remaining
Oklahoma
after
State
that.
coming.
So
It's just one of those deals where it's a huge game for them, regardless. I don't care how
Huge
good or
name,
bad they
huge
are.
opponent.
Yeah, it's just
The last time they played us, they beat us.
yeah.
Sure, so that matters. It was a long time ago. They knocked our
2009.
quarterback out.
The beginning of the Landry Jones era.
The beginning of a very, 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 very disappointing season, a season where we really
Oh, man.
absolutely had everything going in our favor, that
I mean,
if we stay healthy, God, we could have been the best.
If this game is 62-10, I mean, I won't be surprised.
Yeah, I agree.
I just-
I'll
that's
be
a score. That's the type of scoreline this game should
Yeah.
be, though.
Yeah.
It should.
It should, and the scoreline that Steve is predicting
Yep.
is the type of score that we should see come, 2:00, 2:30 on Saturday, and we're celebrating and getting ready
I don't
to watch
understand.
some.
2:30. That must mean this is a morning kickoff.
Oh yeah.
It's in the
I
Mountain
think-
time zone.
Yeah,
though.
yeah. Oh yeah. So
So-
what time are they kicking off there?
It'd be 10
10 a.m.?
10:05, I think it is,
So-
technically.
So
the
this is our 11th game.
earliest kickoff in the history of OU football, I believe.
It's our 11th game of the season.
Tied for it.
Tied
yes.
for it.
Tied for it?
Cotton
The
Bowl
Arkansas-
2001.
I
Well,
think-
it's going to
well, I
beat it by a
think-
couple minutes.
But yeah, you can beat it by
Couple
2
minutes.
minutes.
Okay.
Oh
Yeah, by schedule.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So this is our 11th game of the season, and I believe we've played. This will be our 8th 11 o'clock
This will be our
kickoff.
7th.
Our 7th. Okay.
7th. What we will have played 8 total
Oh, because of next week.
games at 11
That's
o'clock.
Yeah. 8 out of 12.
Yep. And
8
if
out
we
of
make
12.
the conference championship, it'll be 9.
9. Yeah.
So we'll just let this be our realist rant about, yet again, this conference and their inability to be good enough to have a network that is at the upper end of what college football should be, and that is playing in premier slots that actually are good for your fans, both at home and attending the game. The idea that Big Noon is some special thing is just ridiculous, but that's what Fox has done.
no,
so
this is ESPN game.
Well, this is an ESPN game,
Yeah.
but most of those 11
Fox
a.m.
started,
kickoff
yeah.
are Fox, and Fox started it.
Yeah.
And this is an aberration to have an 11 a.m. kickoff for ESPN, and what I think will be an aberration going forward. We won't see this, I'm quite confident, because it's a bad kickoff time. It's a bad kickoff time for someone in the Central Time Zone, much less the Mountain Time Zone, which is where this is being played. And it's really bad for a premier team, which we should be and perennially are. To have an early kickoff like this is just a joke. And it's one more reason we need out of this conference as soon as we can.
We need to do an over/under on 11 o'clock kickoffs for next season before the SEC announces.
That's a great, and they're going to
They
announce
said
in
mid-December.
the summer.
They said mid-December they were going to have a schedule, but they were going to have some starting times for some of those games.
4.5.
Which OU Texas will be 11 if I had to guess.
Yeah, that's why
I
I would.
bet there's a good chance that's 2:30.
Maybe.
I bet. So
True, they are kind of.
all right.
pushing
So
for that
what do you
over
think
here.
your over under? You say 4.5?
I'd say the over/under we could set it at 4.5, and I'd say we play under 4.5.
I'm going to say under for sure. I think it's a strong.
I'm thinking
under.
3 or 4.
I think it's a strong under because I don't know if any of your non-conference will be. I think there's a good chance all those will be night games.
We play Maine.
I don't know if that'll be 11 a.m. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe.
Yeah, if we have anything to do with it, those will be night games because of the heat.
Yeah.
We'll have
No,
Maine,
Maine's a late season game.
Houston. Oh, Maine's the Maine's.
Oh,
the
that's
late
our
season.
that's our bye week.
Maine's the
That's
cupcake
our
game.
Yeah, that's our
Rivalry week.
That's our practice.
You know,
game.
Alabama's playing Chattanooga this week. So it's
Right.
that
So
game.
who's non-con? We have Maine. We have Temple. We have
Houston,
Tulane.
and
Tulane.
Tulane.
which is Tulane's not the pushover it should be
Right.
when scheduled.
Well, they're not this year.
Well, they weren't last year either.
Yeah.
They beat USC in the.
Yeah, they
Oh,
got better last year. You're right.
And they almost beat us
But
the year before that.
We'll see. Yeah, they were still a pushover. We just
I
weren't
blame the
very good.
hurricane. I was excited about New Orleans trip. Just to
Yeah,
be
that was fun. We had it.
screwed over on.
Still getting emails.
Well, maybe we'll get a tornado and we'll get to go down there for this. Well, I think that's a good over/under. What do you guys think? I'm under.
I think you nailed it. Nah, I mean, that's the perfect line to me. It could be 4 or 5.
I mean, there's 3 major time slots, right?
You're up in you're pushing that.
3 major time
You're not going to
slots
take
for
a stand.
football.
Come on,
So
take a stand.
is ESPN going to implement the 2:30 as a major time slot for them
Hasn't that always been the big?
for CBS?
I think it'll probably
Yeah,
still
but
be for the
CBS
SEC.
is the Big Ten now, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm assuming ESPN will implement a 2:30
I would
prime
imagine.
I think
time
with,
game, right?
with the big showcase of OU and Texas coming into the conference, they will try to get us in the midday or the night.
You're gonna have to with these big names. You're gonna have
Yeah.
to implement something
I mean,
where
we're at Ole
So make a
Miss,
you got to
we're
make a
at
call.
LSU,
Over or under?
Bama's at home, and we've got
Yeah.
a legit big time named school schedule. Next year.
Absolutely. Over under.
I'm gonna say, like I said, that line's perfect. I'm gonna say under at 4.
What do you say, Jay?
Yeah, I'll say it's a push. I mean, I think there's
You
3.
can't
You
push
can't
four
push
and a half.
4.5.
It can't be 4 and a
I'm
half.
pushing 4.
4.5.
I'm going 4 then.
Okay,
Okay.
so under.
Because-
All under.
Because I think there's 3 time slots for football games. It just
You're right.
makes sense to play 4 in each time zone.
And there's a fourth Pac-12 in dark, after dark.
Nope.
You should have 4 11 a.m. games. You
Yeah.
should have 4
It's gonna be
2:30s. And
Big
you
12
should have
after
4
dark
night
next
games.
year.
So I would say
Shouldn't be that hard to figure
another
out.
factor that hopefully should be working in OU's favor is we're back to playing championship contention football all the way through a season, in which case we're always a good push to be the game of the week. And so our opportunities for games of the week are going to potentially steal away from having to be in that 11 a.m. time slot, that we're moving into that 6:30 time slot. So I'm hopeful that we are back in the swing of that fully, so that, again, one more reason the under looks like a good bet, that we're moving away from
But
the
just
11.
as a college football fan, for next year, when you look at who's in the SEC and who's in the Big Ten and the games that we get to watch
Oh, the
next
slates are
year,
going to be awesome.
it's unbelievable.
The slates are
it's
going to be
getting
great.
to where it needs
and
to be.
my
isn't it?
the only thing I would harp on as the sport that we love, if they could just, I know they're different companies, but if they could just work together so that you're not having monster matchups at the same time, please.
So that, some would say that's called collusion, but I agree. I think that actually would be nothing wrong with that, and they could actually accomplish that.
Love
one way or
going to the
other.
games. I hate when we're at the game and
there's
it's
a
like,
huge.
oh, Ohio State
It's
and
gonna
Michigan's
be.
playing.
It's going to be
like, come on, can we
inevitable,
not?
though. It's many great matchups as we're getting. It's inevitable you're going to see some of that.
Yeah.
The good thing is there's going to be plenty of good games to watch in the other time slots. We suffer through so many times that you're talking about where the 3 great games that week are all at the same time, and we're then sitting around trying to get excited about nobody state against who cares. And I don't think you're going to have to suffer through that very much at all.
Movie studios literally will move the opening date of movies around based on other movies that are
Absolutely.
big coming out because it's beneficial to both studios.
Right.
You don't want to have the biggest Marvel movie opening up against a Top Gun or something like that. You know, they did the Barbenheimer situation this year where both the tentpole movies came out the same weekend, and it was like
Two totally different movies.
this big thing that happened. Right, two
Well,
completely different movies. This
Well,
big
they do that in TV all
cultural
the time
event
too.
essentially. But I would say that CBS would rather have Ohio State, Michigan at 11 as opposed to going against Alabama, OU at 6 o'clock. Why would you get the eyeballs away from your game because of the
Absolutely.
other game?
No, absolutely.
When both companies can benefit in ad dollars by scheduling their times at the other end.
Well, if they're smart, they'll gravitate towards that, and the Big Ten has always traditionally had a lot of those 11 a.m. kickoffs, so you just give it to them.
Yeah.
And they're in the eastern side, so it is noon for them, not 11 a.m.
Well, the Southeastern Conference.
So I see that
mostly
happening.
Mostly Eastern time
Yeah, but
zones, too.
traditionally the Big Ten has done
Right.
that. So television has always done that as well. I think it just makes sense. So TV shows, if you got either
Three major
whoever's
networks,
matching up on
right?
big TV or on a big event like the Academy Awards or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, 3 major networks, 3 time slots that just work it out.
Yeah, and you don't
Yeah,
have
but
to
you're
work it
working with
out.
a lot more product though than just I mean, like you said, look at the slates. You could have OU, Bama, and Texas, Georgia, which the SEC won't schedule it that way. But you could have a great SEC matchup and then another good SEC matchup where you're having to.
Well, you might have
Yeah,
great.
It's the grades that you should be able to calculate.
You should be able to
Yes.
figure that out.
Well,
That's
yeah,
fair.
you're
And
smart
they
enough.
will.
Well, you're smart enough. You're not going to put it to the unless you get in a weird situation where you just can't help it. You're going to have each of those time slots for the SEC have the biggest matchup that week possible, right? And then if you're the other networks working with the Big Ten, you're going to do the same thing. But if you look at it, you're going to, if there happen to be an opening at 2:30, you're going to push that bigger game to the 2:30 if either network is going to do that. So I think you're going to see that. Now I do think you're going to see some situations where there's 2 great games going on just because there's going to be so many great games. But I'm excited about that. I'm really excited about the fact that we're going to see probably every Saturday really, really good football in every time slot, and that's going to be to the detriment of a lot of other teams. And I think that strengthens my long-time contention of we need to get this league to where it's more elite, and we need to drop the bottom half of the league and get it into its own separate division, because the eyeballs won't be there. It's just not going to be that exciting to see, pick a school, Arizona and an Oregon State play, and I know they're not going to be necessarily together, but those level of teams, no one's watching that game.
It'll be interesting to see as
Except
well.
when they're 9 o'clock kickoffs, because that's all that's left.
Unless
Yeah.
they push to the very end.
And it'll be interesting to see as well how, with the Big Ten now splitting time with NBC, how NBC starts utilizing some of those time slots as well, because NBC isn't just showing Notre Dame anymore. And so the way that it's written up, I'm assuming, will ESPN still show? Like, what if there is what if game day goes to Columbus and it's Ohio State, Michigan? Fox gets the rights to that first because that is who. Like, is ESPN still going to show other games outside of SEC games?
I don't know.
I don't think ESPN has any Big Ten anymore.
So it's
I think it's CBS.
So
and
you're
NBC
you're
only.
talking about true network alignment at this point
with conferences.
with conferences.
It sounds like it.
I think all the SEC is going to be ESPN, ABC, and SEC Network. I don't think there'll be any Fox games in the SEC.
Big 12 is going to have a lot of problems.
I have a question about that, and as we're wrapping up, but what do you think our interest in Big 12 football going forward will be? Do you think because
Us four here?
Yes, because we watched so many
Zilch.
Big 12 games over the last 30 years. When OSU plays Kansas State, and those are the top 2 teams in that conference, and we're we've already played our game at 2:30,
Right.
and OSU K-State's playing at 6 o'clock. But then you've also got Georgia, Florida, let's say. Well, that's always a 2:30
I'll
game.
hate watch
But
OSU every day of the week.
LSU A&M's playing at 6 o'clock, and OSU Kansas State's playing at 6 o'clock.
I think that
I'll be watching LSU.
You'll have some inertia that keeps you interested this next season. It will be a far cry from what it is this season, and it will diminish even more in the future. So let me ask you a question to answer your question. Who did Indiana play last week? Who cares?
Illinois.
And that's I think it was actually Illinois. But
Hey, I watch college football.
right. So you're,
watch all the
you're
games.
not
But
going to
also,
watch it. You're
I
not
mean,
going to care.
I think you're going to get a lot of Big 12 after dark because you're
You might.
adding Arizona,
Now
Arizona
Now that's
State,
when there's
Utah.
nothing else on.
Yeah.
Listen.
we'll watch it and hate watch it.
I will be a massive Big 12 fan if it's Big 12 after dark.
Right.
Because
Right.
there's nothing better than us doing our post game
And hate watching
celebrating
something.
a victory and just watching some 46-42 night game
OSU
out here under
versus
the
Arizona
stars
State.
with the fire pit and our beverages and our cigars. I'll do that.
Absolutely.
Till
And
I'm
that's
no longer
the
on
only
this
way we'll
planet.
watch it.
Well,
It's kind of how I feel about the ACC right now.
Right.
I watch two teams in the ACC.
Yeah.
If there's a couple of good teams in the Big 12 that are worth watching because they're in the top 10
In the
and
hunt.
it means something,
Yeah.
I'll probably tune in just to put it on.
But not
outside-
over one of those other teams.
No.
Right.
And you'll watch
teams that have implications on our season
Right.
that we need to win or lose or do something.
Or we're scouting
with
to see
Yeah.
because we got
how
another
they are.
schedule coming up.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's very much how I view the ACC.
But there's
right
also the Big 12 is going to be having Thursday and Friday games as well.
Yeah.
Well, I have to watch it.
So
Yeah.
that's going to be a situation where that's the only game on anyway. We're going to watch those to begin with.
Yeah, and I think you think
I
about
want to
how
watch
many times
Utah.
Dominate the Big 12.
No, I want to see them do what they do, but I can see some Utah, Kansas State like battles.
That
in
would
the
be
next
true.
several years.
But we won't watch it the way we'll like if we're just sitting around and we're waiting. Like if we're waiting for a 2:30 kick and it's 11 a.m. games, by default we'll turn on a Big 12 game. That's not going to happen going forward. We'll turn on Vanderbilt versus somebody because they're in our conference and we're watching that. So I think it's going to be exceptionally diminished.
I think it's
and-
like you said. We'll still watch a year or two, and then it'll slowly diminish to where everything we watch is
Yep.
SEC.
The
Big Ten.
fall off in the Big 12 is about to be heavy. I mean, it's going to be a drastic downswing. I mean, you're losing your cash cows. You're losing your best teams. It's going to be the freaking American
it's like,
Conference.
It's like Boise State.
It's
or
gonna be
something,
the
yeah.
American
Nobody outside of the towns and the fans of these other Big 12 teams watches these games.
Right.
Nobody
Currently.
east of the Mississippi watches any other game that doesn't involve OU and Texas.
Right.
Like they do
Yeah.
not care about any other team in the Big 12.
In the Big 12, yeah. And that'll be even more so going forward when they're not a conference of contention. I think you're right. Well, a reminder that the midweek pod is brought to you by Fluke Luke Fishing. Go check him out on YouTube. Watch him, like him, subscribe. He gives a lot of great fishing advice. We're going to be here to watch the game against BYU in the morning. We'll be podding at some point that day. We may wait until the Texas game is over. We may pod ahead of that and then maybe give an emergency pod if Iowa State can pull it off, with excitement about what potentially lies ahead for OU if they can continue to take care of business. Until then, Boomer.
Sooner.